podcast.
All right, we'll get it going in 3, 2. What's going on, Fight Bros podcast listeners? Coming at you today with Fight Bros Cryptid Files number 4. Today we're going to be talking about Indrid Cold and the existence of extraterrestrials. I got a good guest coming at you today. I've been wanting to get this gentleman on for a long time. I always have great conversations with him. So, this gentleman right here, he's the varsity head coach at Pulaski County High School for baseball. He's also coached varsity football for a while as well, and he's not currently doing that this year, but he's been a part of that football program for a very long time. And most importantly, he's about to be one of my in-laws once me and my fiance get married. So I'd like to welcome Greg Allen on the podcast today.
Thanks, Marcus. I really appreciate you having me, man. This is something I've looked forward to for a while. I'm glad we finally had time to do it.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you for coming on. So, Greg, I just mentioned a couple of things about you. Would you like to tell, I know a few listeners that listen to this podcast, they know you personally, but for those who don't, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself? Just anything.
Sure. I'm a teacher at Pulaski County Middle School. Of course, we just merged and consolidated. As you said, I coached football at the high school, Pulaski County High School, for 16 years. This is my first full season not coaching football. I don't miss the practice as much Monday through Thursday, but Friday nights has been tough. I think I'll eventually get back into that, but I'm also currently the head baseball coach at the high school. We had a really good year last year. I'm proud of those guys. This is my 8th year coaching baseball and 4th year as the head baseball coach. So we'll start baseball workouts this week for our fall preseason stuff, and just excited to get everybody back out there and get working again.
Yes, sir. How long had you been a part of the football program? I never knew that either.
I'd coached football for, this would have been 16 years, since 05. I started out with Coach Turner, coached with him until 09, and then remained part of the staff with Coach James, and was actually started out with Coach Dixon when he got hired, and was with him for 6 months. And then I got sick, had some health problems, and took some time off from it. I was just uncertain with what the future held with my health, and thank God everything worked out. And but at that point they were about to start the season, and again baseball and football were going to overlap, so I just made the decision to focus on baseball. And I think it was the right move at the time, considering football and baseball were kind of, again, overlapping this past spring just due to COVID. But yeah, man, I've been up there since 05. Been a part of some great teams, and some teams that struggled a little bit, but sometimes those are your favorite,
Oh, yeah.
I've enjoyed coaching a lot of good young men over the years.
Yeah, that's what I liked about it. The 1 year I did is bond. That's a bond that you'll have forever.
Right. I mean, I feel strongly that there are life lessons that you learn in athletics that really can't be learned anywhere else.
Yeah.
And different for different sports, but with the specifics. But learning how to succeed and be humble, and how to fail. Those are important lessons that I don't think you can learn anywhere else.
I agree. So I got another question for you, kind of building off the coaching. I wanted to know kind of how you got your start. Did you put yourself out there, or did somebody kind of give you a chance? I know with myself, a coach that I played for, he had a lot of respect for me and how hard I worked, so he ended up giving me my shot to give coaching a try. And I was wondering if you'd share your experience about that.
Man, it's, I think everything happens for a reason, and it's just kind of strange the way it all came about. I was finishing school at Radford University at the time. I'd worked at Volvo for 10 years. Excuse me. And I've been friends with Jack Turner for a long time. Followed Jack as a player. He was graduating when I was coming into the program as a player, but we always kept in touch. And I had run into him only a few times, and he mentioned me coaching football. And when I got into education, I honestly had no intention of being a coach. You know, I was pretty focused and determined just to be the best teacher I could be.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, we crossed paths one morning. Honestly, I was jogging off my road, and he was coming down the Fieldhouse Road, and we ran a couple miles together, and he mentioned it again, and I started to really consider it at that time. And I'll never forget, football was about to start that year, and I went in and told my wife, Kim, I said, look, I think I want to coach football. I think I want to help out with the football program. And she was fully supportive. She said, oh, that's exciting, you know, I think it'll be good for you. But I knew the magnitude of the time and the commitment. Oh, yeah. And I told her, I said that, you know, if I go up here right now, everything's going to change for our family and for just with the time commitment. And again, she was fully supportive. I went up, talked to Coach Turner, and you know, the rest is history, so to speak. Been with the program, or had been with the program ever since. Again, I expected an enormous time commitment and effort commitment.
Yeah.
But really, even with that, didn't really know what I was getting into.
Yeah.
Wouldn't change a thing with it, but yeah, that's how it all kind of happened, and been there ever since.
Yeah, it is a huge time commitment, and you know, coaches like yourself that really put all they can into it, all their effort and hard work. It definitely takes up a lot of time.
It takes up more time than most realize. And then I'd hooked up with Coach King. Coach Donovan was a baseball coach there for years, and we had talked about me helping out with baseball, and I was just, at the time, I mean, been a lifelong baseball guy, you know, and wasn't really willing to sacrifice that extra time to coach another sport.
Yeah.
And then when Coach King came on, I started helping out. His second year was the JV coach. And then when he resigned and moved with what is now his wife Carla to Pennsylvania, I applied and thankfully got the baseball job. I've had a blast coaching baseball too, man. It's been fantastic.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so, you know, when I've talked to some athletes that have kind of talked about you over the years, I told them, you know, how much respect I have for you. You've never coached me. I had a chance, if I would have played football in high school, I would have got a chance for you to coach me. But I've always told them, I said, to have a coach like him, you know, I know there's not a whole lot of people in my circle that I know are getting after of it every day for themselves. You know what I'm saying? I can think of maybe you every day when I get up. I'm like, okay, you know, all of us that are exercise fanatics, we're just like, we got somebody that motivates us. And I know some kind of little voice in my head, it's always like, I know you're running today, and I know Carmen is running. I know these two guys are getting after of it. So y'all are kind of a little voice in my head that keeps me motivated to get my runs in, you know.
Right.
But going back to, you know, what I've told them is I've like, you don't see a lot of coaches that spend that type of, you know, hard work and self-care on themselves. And that's why I got a lot of respect for you as a coach when you've never coached me, is because I know how you put in the work for yourself. And you know, I know how much time you spend at the high school. So I think it's a lot different when you see somebody that is still motivated to, you know, exercise and stuff for themselves, whether it's for sport or, you know, just general fitness.
Right.
So, you know, going into that, let's talk a little bit about your exercise routine, because I know you do some long runs, and, you know, tell us a little bit about, I know you've done some 24-hour races, so you really, you know, break that mental, physical barrier where you're not going to be broken on those runs with stuff like that.
Well, I appreciate all the kind words, man. That means a lot. Yeah, you know, as a coach, I've always kind of felt like I think we've all had a coach who asked you to do something, and in the back of your mind for a moment, you're thinking, man, I'd like to see this guy do that.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to be that guy. If I'm asking an athlete to perform something really difficult, I'd like to at least be able to at least attempt it or come close, or But fitness has always been kind of a part of my life. I started off as a weightlifter coming out of, Joe Hicks football program.
I've seen a picture that your son Drew posted, and you were jacked.
That was back in my powerlifting days.
Yeah, real beefy. Yeah.
Yeah, I weighed probably 240 for several years and competed in some bench press contests and some powerlifting competitions. And then as I got a little older, I got to a point where, just being heavy was, going up and down steps. And I thought, man, and I remember I ran into Coach Hicks one day when I first started running. And I mean, when I say running, a mile, a couple miles, 20 minutes of cardio.
Oh, yeah.
And I told Coach, who was, Boston Marathon participant, and has run it, I think, 5 or 6 times. But I said, I can't decide, I can't fully commit, Coach. I said, I can't decide whether I'm going to be a runner or a weightlifter. And Coach said, well, shoot, at your age, you better be a runner. I was right at about 30, I think. And, like always, I kind of took his advice and eased into running. Never really enjoyed running to that point. And, I kind of upped my mileage. When people have consulted with me or asked about running, I've always encouraged, if you're out running, you're a runner. You're putting in some time and some effort that maybe you hadn't done before, whether it's a mile or 5 miles. And so I started off literally running to the end of my street and back, which is, it's 0.2 of a mile.
Oh, yeah.
And was so proud of that. And then as I kind of got into some CrossFit training and some cross training. And make a long story short, I'd lost weight from the weightlifting, and whole time I'm kind of into fitness, but not necessarily the endurance aspect of it. And I tore my bicep and my labrum doing some hang cleans one time, and at the time I was running, just runs maybe 3 times a week, doing something 6 days a week. And when I tore my bicep and my labrum, I was limited to what I could do as far as the amount of weights and the movements. That was 5 years ago. I think it was in April. And so I kind of just started upping my mileage with my runs. And I'd run a half marathon previously with Carmen, my cousin. And he's an amazing endurance runner, marathon runner. Mm-hmm. Just as I upped my mileage up, I was like, I think I'm ready for a marathon, and just signed up for one, and had no idea what I was getting into. It was a trail run in Carvin's Cove in Roanoke.
Okay.
I remember everybody that morning looking at my shoes, and that's when I thought I might be in trouble. They're like, oh, how many trail runs have you done? I said, I'm running a trail at Randolph Park. And there's a big difference between a trail at Randolph Park and running in mountains. And anyway, I completed that. I remember Coach Hicks telling me, he said, it'll be the most accomplished feeling you've ever felt as an athlete. And just to know that you've done something that very few have done, I think. So then I got into I was really into the endurance running, and a couple 24-hour races. I think I've had 4 ultras now, which is anything over 26.2, anything over a marathon. I still, I'm kind of disappointed in a couple of those that I gave myself options deep into the race to stop, where I didn't reach my goal. And still certainly, long distances. But
now what's I remember you told me one time, what's your highest amount of miles you got in one of those 24-hour races?
The first 24-hour race I competed in, I ran 40 miles. Okay. But I only stayed for 9.5 hours.
That's what I was going to mention. I was going to say, and I know you didn't do the whole 24 hours.
No, it was, we'd had a football game at EC Glass the night before. I got home at 1:30, left at 5 to go to Rocky Mount, had no sleep. It was 41 degrees and beautiful that day.
That's that motivation, that drive I'm talking about.
Then it started raining, and that changed everything. It rained for the next 8 hours, and I was with Deputy Perry Hodge, who passed away.
Yep.
and was killed tragically. Good friend of mine, good running buddy. I miss him. And I kept trying to get away from Perry because I wanted to leave. And Perry's like, we're not leaving, dude. We're staying. We're here for 24 hours. I was like, okay. So he talked me into staying once at 30 miles.
Yeah.
And I'm tired and so change clothes, change shoes. I get out and hit the 40-mile mark, or I was approaching the 40-mile mark, and I saw Perry was probably, quarter mile or so away from me.
Okay.
Around the track. And I thought, here's my opportunity. Gave myself an option. I said, dude, I'm leaving. And he's like, no. I said, yeah, I'm out of here, man. So at 40 miles, I went and got my medal, packed it in.
Yeah.
And then the most recent one was one at State Park. It was unofficial because of COVID. And my cousin Carmen and I had run it. And I did 41 that night in about 12. And the one in Rocky Mount was a 1 mile loop.
Okay.
Which, the monotony and repetition just, you don't understand what that does to you mentally until you've run 20 of them or 30 of them. But this one was a 4 mile loop, and it was much more difficult in the woods. And I think there were like 5 of us left that night. Carmen had completed his 41. We had agreed to, we're going to do the same amount.
Oh, yeah.
So he finished a couple hours before I did. And, it got dark, and I was, again, kind of disappointed that I gave myself options because that day my goal was 50. And anyway, I hit 41, still something to be proud of, but I'm still trying to cross that threshold where I set a mark. There is no option B or plan B, and I hit it, no matter what. But there's something that I know, as an athlete, I know you understand this, that you just when you go through, you hit certain points in those races where you suffer and you develop a relationship with suffering.
Yeah.
And to come out of that on the other side, it's really a euphoric feeling that not many experience.
Oh, yeah. That was well put.
Yeah.
Now, I know me and you talked about this. Would you say, now I know you talked about Joel Hicks was a little bit of inspiration for running as well. But kind of going into your 24-hour races, I know me and you both read David Goggins' autobiography. Would you say that probably had, the biggest input on you really pushing yourself in some of these 24-hour races and
Absolutely.
Major races like that?
Absolutely. And you and I are both into that stuff, the endurance, how much can you take, all this stuff. But Goggins, and there's a guy, Jesse Itzler, who is part owner of the Atlanta Hawks. He's a motivational. He started out as a rapper. Anyway, long story short, he wrote Living with a Seal. And it's before Goggins was as popular as he is now. And I'd read that book.
Yeah.
He had invited Goggins in to live with him for, I think it was a month. And he didn't even know the guy. But anyway, both of those guys were inspirations. And just Goggins, his story from what he came from. And, I always, any race that I've run like that, an endurance race, whether it's a marathon or an ultra or the half, whatever, I feel like I draw upon what he calls his 40% rule, where, most of us, when we think we're tanked and we're done and I just don't know how much I have left, he says, you're really at about 40%.
Yeah.
That's how much your mind limits what you can do. And I, guys like that and that are able to push through that threshold. I remember Coach Hicks on times when we were really being pushed hard at football practice or whatever, and I always remember him saying, your body will go as far as your mind will let it. Your body will go much further than you think it will. And I think that came from his marathon distance running experience. So yeah, Goggins, Jesse Itzler, a guy named Rich Roll. I read a couple of his books. He is a triathlon guy.
Okay.
Those were all inspirations and kind of, I guess, guidebooks in a way,
Yeah, I would say Goggins is another one of those guys. He might catch me on a day I'm thinking about taking off, or just had a bunch of stuff going on throughout the day, and I'll see one of his videos and
Right.
I'll say, no,
Same.
it don't matter if it's 7, 8 o'clock, I'm going to go do what I got to do.
Like you said, man, it's like he
Yeah.
posts when he knows I'm trying to take a day off or take an easy day.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see him doing something crazy. I'm like, yeah, man, I gotta get out there.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people that, ask me, do I have days where, even though I'm in the fitness profession, do I have days where I want to just quit and not run? And I tell them, like, I enjoy running, but it's not fun every day. You know?
Yeah.
It's not fun to get up before work and go running.
Yeah.
It's not fun, but I feel guilty, and that's what I like about it, is that guilt that makes me want to be better.
Right.
If I don't get it, I'll think about that all day.
Right,
how I didn't do it.
I understand. Yesterday, and I don't think that with especially stuff like that where you want to be consistent and you want to, and you're a competitive person, you're competing with yourself. There always seems like there's a little more you can do, but then again it's also easy to get lulled into a routine where you're satisfied and you're maintaining, so to speak, rather than improving. Yesterday I was on Sundays. It's my off day, and I walked. I just went for a walk, and then was gonna lift weights. And I came home, sitting around reading a little bit, and the family was going out and about different places, and I was like, man, I could be out. So I went and ran 11 miles.
Yeah.
Just nice and easy.
Oh, yeah.
Felt better after I did it.
Yeah.
It's almost an obsession.
Oh, yeah. So, we'll I feel like we could have did a whole podcast just talking about, exercise routines and motivations and coaching. We could have made a whole podcast off of that.
Yeah, and before we go any further with that, I just want to mention, you've given me all this credit and stuff. When we picked you, we did that obstacle course race at Clear Lake. And, this is you and Mary, my niece, hadn't been together all that long at the time. Or we didn't know you as well.
Yeah.
But when we picked you up on our team, I remember telling my cousin Carmen, and I was like, we got a guy, man. We got a ringer here. And he still talks about how you blazed through that course. And he was like, man, Burks was the best guy out there. He was the best athlete. And I said, I told you.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I remember that course was fun, and that guy, the guy that ended up winning, he cheated.
Yeah, he cheated.
I think they ended up catching it. But yeah, because I remember passing him, he was bent over vomiting maybe first half mile or something. And then somehow he won. Yeah. And I seen him at the finish line. So
it didn't fit, did it?
Yeah. But yeah, so me and Greg, we have a lot of mutual interest, as you can see, but kind of one that's been hitting us lately is UFOs, kind of extraterrestrial. And recently I read a pair of books, and I actually sent them over to Greg because I thought he would be interested in them as well, and he was. So yeah, today kind of the big topics we're going to be talking about is the story of Indrid Cold and the extraterrestrial life and communications of people on Earth saying that they have communicated with extraterrestrials. So we'll just start out with kind of a summary about Indrid Cold, kind of talking about the first book here. This is called Visitors from Lanulos. It's by Woodrow Derenberger. This kind of talks about this figure, Indrid Cold. I think it was 1966. Mr. Derenberger was on his way back home, riding on Interstate 77, which a lot of local people that are listening to this should be pretty familiar with. But that part, West Virginia, Ohio, he was on Interstate 77. And this is not the full story. This is just kind of summing it up quick. But he claimed that and let me know if I'm getting anything wrong, Greg.
No,
and he claimed that, it was pretty late at night, he seen some type of craft about 100 foot over his head pretty late at night. And to kind of sum it up, he claims that the craft, ended up coming in front of him a little bit, and a beam came down on the road. And from this point, he stopped his truck because he claimed that it was kind of blocking his truck, whatever this craft was. And then he said a gentleman got out. He claimed like the gentleman had like a smile. He was in a suit. The gentleman ended up walking to the passenger side of his car, I believe. and he said he didn't even roll his window down, but he realized they were talking. And he said this gentleman, kept a smile on his face the whole time, never moved his mouth. And he ended up realizing that they were having a conversation without actually even speaking. And I think he claimed that the gentleman said, I don't mean you any harm. He asked him, like, what was his name? What was he doing? Was he coming back? He asked him where he worked at, different kind of things like that. To kind of sum it up, that was kind of the first incident. He claimed that this being Indrid Cold got back into his craft and went off in the sky. From this point on, in his book, he has drawings of what that craft looked like. He describes it as what we know a lot of the spherical UFO crafts. So yeah, in this book, Visitors from Lanos, he pretty much describes how this being from what he claims is space, him and Woody Derenberger had a 40-50 year relationship. From that point. This being, Indrid Cold, kept coming in back and forth and checking on him just randomly popping up. The main kind of thing of the book that it covers is he talks about how, after a couple of years of contact with this figure, Indrid Cold, he ends up going to space, this planet called Lanos, with Indrid and a couple other figures that, if you read the book, you'll be able to kind of get a good idea about. In the book, he kind of talked about, how when they went to these different planets that they're set up just like ours. He claims that all these people they're people just like us. He talks about their government, their money, marriage, their religion, how their cars are, houses. For instance, he claimed that, and this is all being spectacle, not really saying I 100% believe everything in this book, but this is all just basing it off of his story. He claimed that one of the big things was that instead of a house like we call it here on Earth, they call it a gathering. I found that interesting. But yeah, so he claims that after a couple of years, he finally went to space with Indrid, and Indrid showed him different planets, claimed that they have, that it was forests, rivers, waterways, just like we have here on Earth. So very interesting. I mean, like me and Greg talked to each other about, just couldn't get our eyes off this book. Like you felt like you had to finish it in one sitting because you just so glued into it at this point. So Indrid, Woody Derenberger actually ended up writing a book on his experience with this. So I just want to break down some of the things that he talked about on that he supposedly seen on that planet and witnessed and got to experience. And, me and Greg will just share our thoughts on that. So we'll kind of start out here. I didn't really have an order here, but we'll just kind of start out. One of the main things that he kind of seen once he got on the planet, and that he realized with his first contract from Indrid Cold, is the language. He claimed that the language was telepathic, and that was very interesting. It's pretty much like just reading somebody's thoughts. And I remember in the book that he said, this is kind of a consent thing, that it's when you're reading, when these extraterrestrials are speaking with you telepathically, you have to consent to be able to speak like that, pretty much having your thoughts read. And supposedly these people in Lanos, that was their main form of communication.
And the book, when you loaned them to me, it was several weeks ago, and I was reading something, and I was trying to finish it before I got to this. And so, like you said, when I started reading the book last week, I couldn't put it down. And honestly, when I looked at the cover and
this is a reprint. It looks like a children's book.
But I was a little skeptical. And again, when I picked it up and started reading this guy's story, Woody Derenberger's story, I couldn't put it down, because the consistencies and similarities between what he was saying in 1966 and what some people have had other experiences with
now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
are the same. And one of the similarities is telepathic communication.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a couple documentaries on Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
Who was a guy that worked at Area 51 and had knowledge of a craft that they had there. But he said, I remember his description of the craft as being seamless with no instruments. And the way and this guy was, I mean, he's a reputable,
yeah.
You know, a lot of people thought he was crazy for years, but now this is a little more mainstream and acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that he presumed that they guided these vehicles was telepathy, and that their communication was telepathic. And just like Derenberger describes in there, I think that, and I believe this,
mm-hmm.
you know, that a person has to be receptive to that kind of communication before it's ever going to happen. That's why so many skeptics have never had an encounter or any communication, you know.
Yeah, pretty much meaning you got to be open-minded to
absolutely
other things. And just to kind of give you a little bit more background on Woody Derenberger, you know, he kind of described himself as a church-going kind of country, laid-back kind of guy. He was a salesman. He claims that he was never, you know, kind of in the business to get a lot of attention on himself, and back
never
then,
made any money on it.
Yeah, and he didn't get a lot of sales. So, and he didn't make money on these kind of appearances that he made throughout these books and stuff. He didn't make money off of it, so he was just kind of telling his story. So let's dive into something else that you brought up. So you pretty much said, you know, these ships and stuff that Bob Lazar's talked about. Woody talked about it in the books. He talked about, you know, there was silent ships when he was on the planet. There was air cars. Nothing had any sound. He might have talked about how it was powered. I just can't remember. But yeah, you said, like Bob Lazar said, through telepathic communication. It's just interesting how, you know, stuff could have no sound. And, you know, I know you've probably heard this, but, you know, with a lot of Bob Lazar's claims, he claims that there's metals that we don't have on Earth that he recovered from some of these ships. So, you know, that could be some of the things that are powering these ships, because Woody talked about it as well, going into the jobs that these people of Lano supposedly had. He said they had metal making factories, steel making factories. He claims that there's factories and all kinds of different jobs available up there. Yeah,
it was cool to just relate, you know, his accounts with, again, some of the things that you hear and see now. And you know, there's the main consistency that I always seem to notice and recognize is their ability. When I say the extraterrestrials, to their level of consciousness, and to interact with others and interact with machinery, and you know, some cultures even as compared to Western culture, believe in teleportation and spiritually being able to travel from one place to the other. And I think there's a relationship there between the two, but it's really interesting how how much they have in common.
Yeah, and see, this is kind of one of the things that I found interesting about it, is when they talked about the religion and how it kind of went to us, and like you talking about, you know, a consciousness. You know, we're very a lot of us on Earth, not saying everybody, but probably one of the predominant religions on Earth is Christianity, and you know, as Christians, like, we believe in spiritual beings, we believe in another life and stuff. So it's kind of interesting how, you know, the consciousness and spiritual belief that they share as well. In religion, he claimed that they believe in the Christian religion, claimed from earliest childhood that they're taught, you know, they're taught God's love, to obey God, that God made everything around them. Different kind of stuff like that.
And that's one thing I wondered about. Like you said, I believe, obviously we're both interested in believers in this type of thing. word for word, everything that Derenberger says in the book. I don't know if I believe it 100%,
Mm-hmm.
or if maybe he was manipulated a little bit by Indrid. But my take on that was kind of, as far as spirituality and religion, and this is just me presuming, that these beings did absolutely believe in God, but if they, Woody Derenberger came from a Christian family in America, so they wanted to seem similar to him.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew that would make him comfortable. So maybe they wanted to appear to be Christians. Where if they did the same thing in a Middle Eastern Muslim family, maybe they said, we believe the same thing. When they know the common thread there is a strong spiritual belief in God and the similarities, and just trying to, again, I think that these beings would only appear to somebody who's receptive. I think they're benevolent.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they can travel here, if they
in an instance, I mean, we're talking 1,000 of light years away, and he's claiming that they can come in an instant.
Right. And if they want to do something to us harmful, it would have been done a long time
ago. And that's what he claims in here is, being with these beings, that he claims that they're no better than us. They don't believe they're better than anybody, and they're supposedly very loving beings, with their religion and anything. They don't believe in war.
Right.
He claims that, and a lot of folks like the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind documentary kind of hits the same stuff in this as well. They claim that these beings are scared to communicate with us, that they have tried in the past, but they know how, on Earth, war has been in the history, from the start.
Sure.
And they don't believe in war. They just believe in peace and love. He claims when they've tried to make contact, they've had missiles shot at them, which, we have some videos of stuff like that, with, supposed UFOs getting shot at and stuff as well. So that's definitely one of the interesting things about it. Let's get into something else. He claimed on there that they had a government body like ours. He claimed that they called them a guiding council of the galaxies. Actually, I just remembered one more thing I wanted to say. So, if you've watched Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I know you have. This is kind of going back to religion. Do you remember the gentleman's name that did the documentary?
His last name's Greer, Dr. Greer.
Dr. Stephen Greer.
Yeah.
So Stephen Greer claims that with his communication during one of his experiences, that they showed him around the galaxy and they said, look, what all God has created. And that's quoting it right from him. So it's interesting that, the Christian religion has stuck with that. And that's why I think that's what I found interesting. Now people could be pushing that, for that, but
I saw a meme yesterday and I thought about you that was really cool, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it here, but it said not believing that there is other intelligent life and extraterrestrial life in the universe is akin to taking a spoonful of water from the ocean and saying, well, there are no sharks in the ocean because there are none in my spoon. It's silly to believe it is trillions of galaxies, trillions of stars and planets that we're
the only one with life. And I agree, and that's what I always tell people too, and talk about this cryptozoology stuff. I'm like, guys, listen, we had man-eating dinosaurs on Earth. I think a lot of stuff could be in play.
I'm with you.
But getting back into their government body, he said that they have a guiding council elected from each galaxy, where they elect a representative, sort of like we do on Earth. They don't really have a president; they have representatives. He claims that this council makes no more money than a regular man. Getting into their money, as a lot of people on Earth would say, the way he explains it in book, they're more of a communist society you could look at. But he says they don't claim that. People are paid according to the size of their family, not for their skill or job. Now, he said that Indrid and a lot of these people from Lanos claimed that it is not a communist society. So, if you read the book, you can get a little bit more about that. So what did you think about that? It pretty much, stated that, you go to school until you're 28. That's what he
Right.
claimed. And when you graduate, you pick a job, and, you're not paid for that job or skill. You're paid on the size of your
Right.
family, how many
Right.
kids you have, essentially.
Again, I don't. That was one of the topics, I guess, that I wondered if he kind of rationalized that, but because it makes too much sense that, and not to be political, that
Yeah.
the people that we elect, like their elected officials, make that much more compared to the average person that's out here working. I thought it was interesting. It almost sounded, a lot of that, what he described was a utopia where everything's just sounds really good.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I have read in other cultures that the education is more directed at what you choose to do, and they give their youth a choice early on. I did think it was interesting that they went to school till they were 28, though. Of course, they live a lot longer.
Yeah. Yeah, so you just brought up, he claims that the life expectancy of these people, he claims that, when he got to the planet, one thing he realized was everybody was in the nude. He claims that these people believed, similar to nudists on Earth, that God made them the way they are. And that's why they don't wear clothes, is because they don't believe that they were intended to wear clothes.
Right.
So he claims that when he got there, he noticed he was the only overweight person when he agreed to go in the nude after a few days. And that nobody there was overweight. He claims that their life expectancy is 125 to 175 years, which is very interesting because, on Earth, we, would like to think we have the best medicine and everything, right, and all that, and our life expectancy is maybe 75, 80. At the long end, we have people live to 100, but probably 70s, 80s would be
Right.
the average, life expectancy of people on Earth. He claims that these people believe in exercise. They believe in health. They don't believe in chemicals. They're all organic foods, which, he could just be pushing an agenda he has, but, so we're not throwing it off the table that we 100% believe everything.
Right. Well, even if he is, all that's true,
Oh, it is true, yeah.
If you are,
I agree.
If you're eating organically and you're taking care of yourself, you're going to live longer.
Oh, yeah.
So, even if he is, I think that that's true scientifically. Even when you and as we've, in our culture, as things have gotten easier with fast food and cheaper, and it's just too easy to eat unhealthy. It's a lot of work to eat healthy. It's a lot of work to be healthy. And it sounded like the people in Lanos were committed to that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think if this was true, I could really see, if we're at the big end living 100 years. I could see that 125 years
Right.
with the exercise and stuff.
And you made the point about having an open mind and, really not limiting yourself to what can happen and possibilities. You read in the Bible, people lived, hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And I think some people think that might be symbolic. Well, is it really? Or did it really happen?
Oh, yeah.
So these are things that, again, I think that if and I think people are starting to be that way, but if you open your mind and don't limit what is possible in the universe, man, this stuff seems more realistic.
Yeah, see, that's what I like. I like that you brought that up, the open-mindedness, because I couldn't believe that, when the government, we did a podcast on this for our first one. The government came out with UFO files. And they literally laid it on the table. These videos, we don't know what they are.
Right.
And it was 30 videos or something.
Right. And I still think we're seeing what they want us to see.
Yeah,
As a bit of a conspiracy theorist in that regard.
Yeah.
They've known for a long time that there's stuff out there that they can't explain.
Woody Derenberger claims that he went to NASA. And they invited him to come. And then he claims that he filled out some paperwork and did some stuff, And then he kind of claims they blew him off. They was
Yeah.
like, we are, everything you told us. He claims that NASA said they already knew.
They knew.
Yeah, he claims that they already knew that there was life in space and everything. And what I liked about this book is he includes where he really was at NASA. He includes the paperwork.
Yeah.
He includes his health records where he was psychologically tested.
Yeah,
and
it's legit. I mean, he got the documentation.
Yeah, so he provides the documentation in this book to show you that that he's legit about everything, and there's nothing going wrong in his mind that would make him make stuff up. I mean, you could still make stuff up with not having issues in your head, but so kind of going back into a couple of more things that we haven't hit. Kind of hitting marriage and children here that he claimed that they had on this on Lanos. So he said marriage, people could get separated, which was kind of a point he touched, I guess, because of how religious they are. So I guess that's why he wanted to hit separation. He claimed that
even disagreement was amicable.
Yeah,
everybody. Again, it sounds like a utopia.
Oh yeah,
but. It was agreeable.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is he said that separation must be agreed by the parents of the husband and wife as well as the guiding council, that government council that we talked about earlier. So that was something kind of interesting when he hit that. Another interesting thing he had was birth control. On this planet they have a fear of overpopulation. So each family is legally allowed to have 2 kids of their own that they physically had. But he claims that they have orphanage like we do on Earth, and that they could adopt as many kids as they wanted to. After that, just physically, they can only have 2 of their own. So I thought that was interesting that they kind of hit the birth control and fear of overpopulation with that. Let's see.
It's a reality, in our world.
That's what I was going to say. Some would say we're...
they have implemented similar, like in China, where you can only have a certain amount of children, and that's definitely a topic for debate everywhere, I'd say. I don't know if it is in Lanos or not.
So, it's been kind of interesting that he hits spots that we could, be debating about politically on Earth.
Yeah, really. Same problem.
Oh, yeah. So, moving on to the last kind of thing that he hits in his book is humanoids. So he claims, with his 40, 50 years of contract with Indrid Cold, that he learned about humanoids, which are supposedly extraterrestrials from another planet, that he claims does not look as human. To some people that are into UFOs, these beings would be called grays.
Yeah.
He claims that... a big claim here that if you're into UFOs, you would know about this, and we did a podcast on it as well. So Woody claims that Indrid claimed that these humanoids, the grays, that supposedly drive pink saucer ships, he claims, and if you get into UFO stuff, a lot of people out in West Virginia, they've written books on these pink saucers and stuff. So people have, supposedly seen this stuff. He claims that they were responsible for the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Have you heard of Betty and Barney Hill? Yeah, which is big, because one of the big claims that Indrid makes, according to Derenberger, was that these humanoids don't have, what's the word for it? It's right on the tip of my tongue. They don't have, I guess, boundaries. Like, they don't believe in ownership of something, I guess. So if they see something and they don't care who owns it, they're going to take it.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Yeah. So he just pretty much claims that they don't believe in boundaries. He's supposedly, Indrid said that these humanoids still won't harm humans, but
they'll take your stuff.
But they'll take your stuff and supposedly abduct you. And if you know the story of Betty and Barney Hill, if that was true, they supposedly, injected like their encounter was pretty much, it looked like they were being studied. Supposedly they claimed, Betty claimed that they ripped her dress up to inject, or not to inject, but to draw something out of her groin.
Right.
Barney claims that they got semen from him, and her dress was ripped and stuff. So if you believe in that abduction, it's hard to say.
According to Indrid, like, this is a whole, like, he didn't want their species to be confused.
Yeah.
It seemed to me with humanoids who didn't have any empathy or, like you said, boundaries or, they're a separate kind of species from people on Lanos or other planets.
Yeah, so I really thought that humanoid part was interesting. He actually drew like a drawing of what humanoids look like. Pretty much just, if you're into UFOs, just looks like a gray, the term would be.
And I went down the missing 411 rabbit hole yesterday. And, was just started watching some videos, and the guy David Politis that has written all these books about these crazy disappearances, but there's something else that's in common with, like, Betty and Barney Hill, is some of these people losing time.
Lost time.
Or being gone for days or weeks and then appearing somewhere 100 or 1,000 miles away, and
like they couldn't,
how they get there.
They couldn't remember it at first as well, which was interesting. And then it all started coming back, which, they made a comedy out of it. They made it called the Men in Black. Right. It kind of has similarities.
Very much so.
Really not hitting a lot about this book, but this was the sequel. This one's called Beyond Lanos. This was from his daughter's perspective, which is interesting as well. His daughter was very young at the time, but she takes up for her father in this book. She claims other siblings don't, that they don't believe into it. That's why I liked this book, Beyond Lanos. It was short, but it was kind of from a different perspective. She said, because of all the attention he was getting, it wasn't I wouldn't really say didn't say she had didn't have a good childhood, but she claims that there was people all around their house all the time, people wanting to stay in their yard, look for UFOs, just people pretty much stalking them, waiting for Indrid to show up.
And in the 60s, 70s, 80s, before it was as accepted, it sounds like there was, a stigma kind of tied to their family, that he was crazy. And I think that her siblings kind of decided that, it's easier for us to just say, he didn't know what he was talking about, than it is to defend him like she has.
Yeah. So, this book pretty much talks about, the siblings didn't take up for Woody. Him and his wife ended up getting divorced. Pretty much talked about how, just a lot of his time was occupied into this. And supposedly the wife, Woody Derenberger's wife, denied stuff until she was on her deathbed. Tanya Derenberger claims that on her deathbed, she said, "I just didn't want y'all to have to live with this, but everything's true. Indrid's true. Indrid's kids that he's had, we didn't mention that earlier. Indrid claimed that Indrid brought his family members. He had kids. He had a wife. He brought them as well. She claims that she played with their kids. She watched their spaceship go back into orbit and everything. So big claims from here. So I thought that was interesting. So her book definitely is a book to read as well. That's why I would mention it. Yeah, if you know me, please reach out. I'll let you borrow these. If not, they're available on Amazon. Not too bad. I think that is like $10 each or something like that.
What I thought was interesting is that Muhammad Ali was a big fan of this book and carried it into championship bouts.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wouldn't have mentioned that. So Muhammad Ali was, I believe it was the visitors from Lanos, right?
And he visited Derenberger. He went and met him.
So he visited Derenberger because he believed in all of this. And he brought this book right here, Visitors of Lanos, to him to 3 or 4 of his fights because he believed it was his good luck charm. If you didn't know it, Muhammad Ali was really big into extraterrestrials and UFOs. One last thing about this book, Beyond Lanos. So in the back of the book, I found this very interesting. They have 3 characters that they believe were beings that they were contacted with. Here at the end here, you probably can't see it too good. It's a picture of a man that Tanya Derenberger believes is the closest thing to Indrid cold.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found interesting is they claimed that this was taken at a UFO convention.
Right.
Now, Woody claimed that Indrid liked to go to UFO conventions and stuff because he looked like a human, so nobody was going to tell the difference, and he wanted more people to be open-minded and accept. So that's what he claimed. But so this supposedly is a picture of Valent Thor. Now, I don't know if you know too much background on Valent Thor. Valent Thor there's a book written about him. It's called Stranger at the Pentagon. I haven't got to read it yet. Long story short, he is an extraterrestrial that supposedly his spaceship broke down. They picked him up and he went to work with the Pentagon for years as an extraterrestrial.
Some have wondered if he's Indrid cold.
Yeah, so some has wondered if this being Valent Thor is Indrid cold. I tried to find out more about Valent Thor on the internet. There's a book written about him, but he's not really accepted on Google as an actual documented being.
That's what made me wonder.
Yeah, and I looked up some stuff on Google. A lot of people just tried to say that Valent Thor or Indrid cold is kind of just a real radical Christian, a preacher that really wants to push his agenda. But yeah, I mean, you can't find, if you Google Valent Thor on Google, you can't find any documentation that he was a real person. Yeah. Which that's what I found very interesting. So yeah, guys, kind of leaving it at Indrid cold right here. Visitors from Lanos by Woody Derenberger, Beyond Lanos with Tanya Derenberger. Great books if you're into UFOs and extraterrestrials. Anything else you'd like to add about these books, Gary?
No, man. Again, they were pretty captivating. Once you started, it's hard to put down.
Oh yeah.
And you just have to have an interest and don't limit yourself to open your mind.
Open your mind. That's a good way to put it. All right, Greg. So last 2 points here. Me and you have talked about this before we kind of dove into these books. Encounters of the Fifth Kind documentary by Stephen Greer. The documentary very well lines up well with these books, but what we're kind of wanting to get out of this is in Encounters of the Fifth Kind, Stephen Greer claims there is a process that you have to do in order to communicate with these extraterrestrials, and I wanted to talk about that for a minute. Now, I haven't got to do this yet, but you have.
Right.
And, I didn't download the app yet, but I plan on downloading it because the app supposedly it just tells you step by step. Supposedly has music for your meditation and stuff. I don't know if that helps or not, but it looked like it provided a lot of good info. It had, and I know the Greer guy recommends it. Hopefully he's not doing it for a money grab.
Right.
But
I don't think he is.
Yeah. But, talk about that, because of my understanding of it, and I think you're going to have a better understanding of it, in order to do this CE5, as they call it, this process to communicate with extraterrestrials. Of my understanding of it, all you need is be out at night. I don't even think you have to be out at night necessarily. No. And a chair, you want to pretty much get yourself into a state of meditation.
Yep.
Pretty much like Woody and Indrid kind of did. You pretty much just want to, meditate, think thoughts. I guess pretty much telling these beings that, you're not.
Right. And when we did it, my cousin and I, he has similar interests as us.
Yeah.
So we had a CE5 event one night, and again, I think that just like with the telepathic communication, anything like that, you have to have an open mind. I think you have to believe. You can't be a skeptic and think. I think that they recognize that. So we started out with, probably between 5 and 10 minute meditation. I'm a meditator anyway. I meditate daily, and where we just focused on our breathing, and we tried to center ourselves with, just clearing our minds. And then, as Dr. Greer instructed and described, he said, you kind of put your focus on the universe and try to, like we envisioned a vortex being expansive, and then drawing right down to my front yard where we were, and just kind of as a beacon to say, hey, we're right here. We'd like to see you. We have good intent. Just make yourself seen. And we meditated on that for another 5 minutes or so, and we started to look around, and it was pretty unbelievable. I expected to see something. Didn't expect that we would see 9, and we saw 9 that night. And
I can attest to this story. When I just got there, if they're outside, I always go over and just see what they're up to. And when I got there, I found out they was doing that, and you and Tony had told me that y'all had seen a few things, and I actually got to see one of those, whatever it was that we saw.
The way they act and move is very distinct from a shooting star or a plane. It's kind of like the videos that we've all seen on television that have been released recently. I was also glad my wife, who thinks I'm crazy and a weirdo, that she got to see one that night
and then,
for herself.
Let's see, at least one of your sons got to see it?
Yeah.
Drew? Okay, yeah.
And the one that Kim saw, my wife, that she saw, was it was probably the best one. And that may be the one that you saw when you were over there too, but it was the movement, the darting, and how from location to location was pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
So I've tried to tell people that, this might sound crazy, but I have seen something very unusual in the sky with y'all that night, and I hate it, but when I went to pull out my phone, it was dead, which those of you who know me well, like Mary, she knows that the nighttime, my phone's dead.
Right.
It's going to be dead or it's about to die at night. So that's not one of the kind of skeptical things that, of course he's trying to say he recorded it but can't provide anything. But yeah, that was the thing I found, weird about it, is we seen planes, like we sit there and y'all depicted everything. It was like, okay, the thing's flying low with flashing, that's a plane. You can see the stars. The stars are way up here. The planes, not as high as the stars. And then, the time I was with y'all there, it just looked like some type of thing that it wasn't shaped like a star. It was more, it looked circular.
Yeah.
And, I can't tell, but you can kind of see the star. It has, beams going off of it, that it doesn't look circular. And this thing was just moving very slow and precise, kind of like it was weaving through the stars, very slow.
The movement was...
And that was just one, and y'all claimed y'all seen 9 of those things.
Yeah, we ended up seeing 9. We were out there for over an hour, and we saw 9. I think we've all had something happen, an inexplicable event or something that we've had happen, and... it's just something really interesting. I think it's really cool. Again, I think if there is anything there, which I think there is, and if they wanted to hurt us, they already would have.
Yeah. So, since we're kind of getting to the end, Greg, you just kind of, talked about, I would say this is my UFO encounter too as well. That's one of the funny things I've told people is I'm like, I've always thought that if I seen something, it was going to be in the, more of cryptozoology field with something physical.
Right.
Like a Bigfoot or something like that. But no, my experience was a UFO. So that's what's drawn me to get more interested in this kind of stuff. Watching the documentaries, talking to you, reading these books. So, last kind of question here before we end it out. What do you believe as far as extraterrestrials? Do you believe in extraterrestrials? Would you say that you just believe that there's other life and you don't really know, what that is? What's kind of your best answer on,
I personally, I do. I believe. Yeah. And there used to be, if you were a person of faith and you were a Christian, that those conflicted those views. But I don't think they do at all, because I'm a spiritual person. I'm a Christian, but I believe that there's certainly intelligent life in the universe. I think it's more accepted now than maybe it ever has been. I've had other experiences where, they're inexplicable. We saw a craft one night in the sky that was very close. This was 12, 14 years ago. It was right over my head, and it was slow, it was silent, and it was enormous. But I think it's just very selfish to think, as expansive and vast as the world is, the universe is, that we are the only intelligent life in the universe. So yeah, I absolutely think it's out there, man.
And I feel the same way as you. You know, I've haven't really been ridiculed, but I've had some family members in the past just kind of tell me like, you know, that's doesn't align with the Bible and Christianity and stuff in terms of like Bigfoot or any of this stuff. But yeah, so for myself, I used to always say that out of all the cryptids, I only believed in Bigfoot, extraterrestrials or aliens, as some like to call them, even though don't believe it's these little green people that are depicted.
Right.
I do, you know, just really dialing in and you know, reading a lot of stuff, watching a lot of documentaries lately, and I do believe there's other intelligent life. So I do believe, you know, I'm just gonna say extraterrestrial. I do believe there's other life. So now, you know, Bigfoot and extraterrestrials are very high percentage. I believe that those are out there as well.
I agree with you. I do too, for sure.
Oh yeah. But Greg, I appreciate you coming on the podcast so much.
Man,
this was a great one.
My pleasure.
So much. I felt like I learned so much about you, just being able. Me and you don't really get to sit down and just talk like this. So
it's been the best part.
Yeah. So that was awesome, Greg. I appreciate you coming on so much, and we'll have to get you on again soon. And I definitely want to get out and do one of these CD5s with you as well. You know, me, you, and Tony, and maybe try to get some other people as well.
That'd be awesome, man.
So I'll learn more about it. All right.
Thanks, Marcus.
Hey, thank you so much, Greg. Well, guys, like and subscribe to us on Facebook at the Fight Bros Podcast. Until next time, thanks, guys.